Today, we are answering the most debated question in football. Who is the greatest footballer of all time? You could ask that question in a pub in Buenos Aires, in a cafe in Lisbon, in a barber shop in London, or a school playground in Mumbai. You would get a different answer everywhere. Pelé, Maradona, Cruyff, Zidane, Ronaldo, Cristiano. The debate has been running for decades and will probably never fully stop. But at some point, the evidence stops being a debate and starts being a verdict. Lionel Messi has now broken the all time World Cup scoring record, 18 goals across 6 tournaments, more than any player in the history of the competition. He did it at 38, and the gap between him and everyone else in every metric that matters is wider than most people have ever stopped to calculate. In this video, we are going to do that calculation. We are going to compare him across every dimension that serious football analysis uses: goals, assists, XG efficiency, chance creation, progressive carrying, performance in knockouts, World Cup impact, not just against Cristiano Ronaldo, but against the legends who came before: Pelé, Maradona, Cruyff, Zidane. By the end, you will understand not just why Messi is the greatest, you will understand why the margin is larger than most people think. Before we compare anyone, we need to agree on what we are measuring. Because greatness in football is not just one thing, it is several things stacked on top of each other. And the greatest player has to score well across all of them. There are 6 pillars we will use throughout this video. The first is goal scoring, both raw volume and efficiency. Not just how many goals a player scored, but how many they were expected to score based on the chances they got, and how much better they performed than the baseline. Expected goals or XG is the tool we use here, and it tells us something raw numbers cannot. The second is playmaking and chance creation. The best players do not just score, they manufacture danger for others. We measure this through expected assists, key passes per game, and progressive passes that break defensive lines. The third is dribbling and ball control. The ability to beat players under pressure, to carry the ball through traffic, to create something from nothing. This is where Messi's case gets almost unfair. The fourth is tempo and game intelligence. How a player dictates the rhythm of a match, how they move without the ball, how they make teammates simply better by being on the pitch. The fifth is performance in knockout competitions. League seasons are long and forgiving. In cup football and international tournaments, there is no second chance. How does a player perform when one bad game ends everything? And the sixth is longevity. Sustaining elite performance across a decade or more, adapting as the body changes, remaining decisive at the highest level long after most players have declined. One more thing before we start. Comparing players across eras is genuinely difficult. Pelé played before pressing, before sports science, before video analysis. Maradona operated in a physically brutal era where defenders could legally assault attackers. Cruyff and Zidane never had a XG tracked in their matches. So where modern data does not exist, we will use context. What their peers said, what the tactical environment was, what the records show, and we will be honest about where certainty ends. Let us start with the most obvious measure. Goals. Lionel Messi has scored over 800 career goals at club and international level. In the modern era, only Cristiano Ronaldo comes close to that number. But the volume, extraordinary as it is actually not the most interesting part of the story. What makes Messi's goal scoring remarkable is the efficiency, specifically how far above his expected goals he consistently performs. Expected goals is a metric that assigns a probability to every shot based on factors like location, angle, body part used, and the type of assist. A shot from the center of the box after a through ball might have an XG of 0.35. Meaning on average, a player scores that chance once every 3 attempts. A header from outside the 6-yard box might be 0.08. Add up every shot across a season and you get an XG total. The number of goals a player should have scored, given the quality of chances they created for themselves. Messi routinely outperforms his XG by margins that analysts struggle to explain. In his peak La Liga seasons between 2009 and 2019, he consistently scored at between 20 and 30% above expectation. That is not luck. That is combination of finishing technique, shot selection, and the ability to find angles that the model does not fully account for. Cristiano Ronaldo is also a supreme goal scorer, and his numbers at Real Madrid are extraordinary. 450 goals in 438 games with consistent XG over performance. But when you look at the nature of the chances each player creates for themselves, a difference emerges. Ronaldo's goals are disproportionately weighed towards penalty kicks and headers, high volume, high efficiency, but relatively predictable in their origin. Messi creates his chances from open play more often, under high defensive pressure through dribbles and one-twos rather than arriving at the back post. His shooting quality measured by goals per shot on target is marginally higher and his positions are harder. Now stretch the comparison back further. Pelé scored over 1,200 goals across his career, but the majority of those came against semi-professional opposition in a Brazilian football system that was structurally weaker than European top-flight football. His Santos team routinely beat clubs that would not survive one season in the championship today. That does not diminish what Pelé was, but it demands context when comparing raw numbers. Maradona scored 259 goals across his career. In the context of his era, where defenders tackled first and asked questions later, and where players recovered on willpower rather than science, that number is respectable but not dominant. Maradona was never primarily a goal scorer. He was something else entirely, and we will come to that. Cruyff scored 370 career goals, excellent for an attacking midfielder or second striker. Zidane scored 125 across his club career, which reflects his role more than his quality. Neither was deployed as a traditional number 9. Messi, uniquely across his competitors, has been the leading scorer in the league in multiple seasons, while also leading in assists. The dual dominance, being both the most dangerous finisher and the most prolific creator in the same competition simultaneously, has no real historical parallel. The assist record tells a story that even Messi's critics find hard to dismiss. Messi holds the all-time La Liga assist record. He leads Barcelona's all-time list not just in goals but in assists. What makes this extraordinary is that he was doing it while also topping the scoring charts. The usual trade-off in football, you either score or you create, does not seem to apply to him. In his peak seasons between 2014 and 2021, he averaged more than one goal or assist per game across all competitions. That sustained rate of direct contributions to the scoreline is without precedent in documented football history. Expected assists or XA measures the quality of the chances a player creates for teammates, not just whether the teammate scores, but how good the pass or cross was. Messi's XA numbers across his La Liga career are the highest ever recorded by a single player in that competition. He routinely created chances worth 10 to 15 expected goals per season just through his assists, on top of his own XG. Cristiano Ronaldo's assist numbers are solid but significantly lower. In his best La Liga seasons, he averaged around 0.2 assists per game. Messi in the same era averaged 0.35 to 0.4. The gap in playmaking is wider than most people appreciate because the headline conversation is always dominated by goals. Zidane was perhaps the greatest pure playmaker of his generation. Languid, intelligent, always one step ahead in reading of space. His assist numbers at Juventus and Real Madrid were excellent, but Zidane was not a goal scorer in the way Messi is. He was a provider first. The comparison only reinforces that Messi occupies both roles. Cruyff was the architect of total football, a man who dictated where his teammates ran, how space was created, how the game was played. His influence on the collective was profound and arguably unmatched philosophically, but his statistical output in terms of assists, even adjusted for era, does not approach Messi's volume. Maradona's playmaking was explosive rather than sustained. He could unlock a defense with a single pass that nobody else in the stadium had imagined. But across a full season, the consistent creative output, the 15 assists here, the 20 key passes there, week after week for 15 years, was not his game. He operated in shorter, more intense bursts. This is the category where the conversation gets uncomfortable for anyone who wants to argue against Messi, because here the evidence is not even close. Dribbling statistics in modern football are captured through successful take-ons, how often a player beats an opponent while carrying the ball. Messi led La Liga in completed dribbles in multiple seasons. In the 2014-15 season, he completed 150 dribbles, a figure that, to put in context, was more than some club midfields managed collectively. But raw dribbling statistics understate what makes him different. The quality of the spaces he enters matters. Messi does not dribble wide and run into the corner. He drives into central areas, between lines, into the most dangerous possible zones. His progressive carrying numbers, the distance he carries the ball towards the opponent's goal, are consistently elite, and the difficulty of those carries, measured by the defensive pressure he absorbs, is among the highest in track football. There is also this question of how he dribbles. His low center of gravity, which coaches and physiotherapists have studied in detail, allows him to change direction at full speed in a way that is biomechanically different from taller players. He can deaccelerate, shift weight, and accelerate again in a fraction of the time most players need. Combined with his left foot, it creates a dribbling style that has never been fully neutralized, even by the best defensive systems in the world. Maradona was the closest comparison. The 1986 World Cup goal against England, the second goal, the one scored with the feet, is the benchmark against which all great dribbles are measured. He combined low balance, vision, and sheer bravery in a way that Messi mirrors. Many football analysts, including some who would not consider themselves Messi partisans, regard this as the one dimension where the comparison of Maradona is genuinely equal. Cruyff's dribbling was more conceptual. The Cruyff turn, the feints, the use of the body to sell the defender a direction before going the other way. He was not a volume dribbler but a precision one. Zidane was similar. The roulette, the disguised pass, the half turn under pressure. Both were brilliant. Neither would have topped a dribbling leaderboard in modern statistical era. Ronaldo in his early Manchester United years was perhaps the closest in volume and excitement to a young Messi. He could carry the ball at speed and beat defenders on one-on-one situations. But as his career progressed, he moved deliberately towards a more positional game, conserving energy for runs into the box. Messi maintained his dribbling output into his mid-30s, which is almost physiologically unusual. Of all the pillars, this is the hardest to quantify and the easiest to miss if you are only watching the highlights. Tempo in football means the rhythm of a match. How quickly the ball moves, how many decisions per minute the opposition has to make, how much defensive organization is disrupted simply by where a player positions themselves. Great players control tempo without touching the ball. They do it by occupying space in a way that forces the opposition to account for them, which opens up space for everyone else. Messi, particularly in his mid-career years at Barcelona between 2014 and 2021, became a specialist in this. After his early years as a wide forward exploding into space, he drifted into a false nine and eventually a deep playmaking role. From deep positions, he could receive the ball between the lines, have time to assess the entire pitch, and then either accelerate into space himself or play the pass that broke the press. The combination of his dribbling threat, which defenders could not ignore, and his passing range meant that opposition midfields were perpetually pulled out of shape just trying to track him. The data reflects this in progressive passes received. The number of times a player receives the ball in a forward zone having been found through a breaking line pass. In this metric, Messi is consistently elite, not just as a passer but as a receiver, which tells you that his teammates can always find him in the right place at the right time. That is not accidental, it is positioning intelligence, and it is something that does not show up in goals tally. Cruyff is, in many respects, the intellectual ancestor of this kind of football. The way he moved, the way he organized teammates around him, the way Ajax and then Barcelona played when he was the conductor. It was the earliest version of the positional game that Messi has since mastered. In terms of football intelligence, the two share more than any other pairing in this comparison. Zidane's game intelligence was spatial rather than systematic. He read the immediate geometry of a match better than almost anyone, which is why his individual moments were so devastating. But he was not a tempo controller in the structural sense. He was a solution to immediate problems rather than a shaper of overall rhythm. Maradona controlled games through force of will and individual brilliance rather than spatial organization. When he was on, the entire game bent around him. When he was marked tightly, teams had to find answers without him. That reliance on one player as the single source of inspiration is a different model, and arguably a more fragile one than what Messi does. Ronaldo has never been primarily a tempo player. His intelligence is about runs, timing, and positioning inside the box. He makes the right runs at the right moment. But the broader game management, the dictating of rhythm from deep, that has never been his role, and he has not sought it. League football is the truest test of consistent excellence. A tournament is decided over 2 legs or 90 minutes. A league season runs across 38 match days over 9 months against every tactical system, every playing surface, every climatic condition, every fatigue scenario. Messi's La Liga record is the most decorated individual record in the history of that competition, which is among the 2 or 3 most competitive leagues in the world. The hat-trick record deserves a moment of attention. Scoring a hat-trick in the top flight requires genuine finishing quality. 3 goals in one game against a professional defense in real competitive conditions, 36 times. That figure alone would represent a remarkable career for a striker. For Messi, it is a footnote in a larger story. La Liga during Messi's prime was not a weak league. He did much of the damage to Real Madrid, to Atletico Madrid, to Sevilla, to Valencia, clubs that were simultaneously competing for Champions League places and defeating the best teams in the world. The era of Fernando Torres, David Villa, Diego Forlan, Karim Benzema, Sergio Ramos. The only honest response to the historical comparisons here is that we cannot know that what Pelé or Maradona would have averaged in La Liga during this era, because they never played in it. What we can say is that neither dominated their domestic competition with the statistical ferocity that Messi sustained. Maradona's peak years at Napoli produced extraordinary performances, Serie A titles, UEFA Cups, but his individual numbers across a full season rarely matched the scale of Messi's best La Liga campaigns. For most of his career, one criticism attached to Messi like a shadow that he was a club player, not an international one, that he performed for Barcelona but went quiet for Argentina, that when it mattered most, World Cups, finals, elimination games, he disappeared. For the 2026 World Cup, before his birthday, he broke the all-time World Cup scoring record. Not tied it, broke it. Then for good measure scored again in stoppage time to make it 18. Messi has now scored 18 goals across 6 World Cup tournaments, more than any player in the history of the competition. He surpassed Miroslav Klose's record of 16 and Marta's combined record of 17 in a single afternoon. To understand the scale of that, Klose's record had stood since 2014 and was considered by many analysts to be essentially unbreakable in the modern tournament format. Messi broke it at 38. The record goal itself was characteristically Messi. He missed a penalty in the 9th minute, the kind of moment that ends the narrative for lesser players, but he absorbed it, stayed in the game, and 29 minutes later received the ball from Medina after a perfect dummy by Thiago Almada and calmly finished into the bottom corner with his left foot from 20 yards. The stadium erupted. Then in the 95th minute he sealed it again, a counter-attack, a clinical finish. 5 goals in 2 games. All of Argentina's goals in this World Cup so far scored by a man who turns 39 this week. This has to be understood in the full arc of his international career, because the dismissals came loudest and loudest in this arena. He won the 2021 Copa America, Argentina's first major international trophy in 28 years. He won the 2022 World Cup with what was already being called the greatest individual tournament by any player since Maradona in 1986. He won the 2024 Copa America, and now at 38, he's leading the scoring charts in a third World Cup in which he has scored 4 or more goals. The 2022 final against France remains one of the greatest individual performances in any sport. Argentina were 2-0 up. Then Mbappe scored twice in 2 minutes. Messi, 35 years old, in the 108th minute of a World Cup final, drove into the box and scored. Argentina won on penalties. He lifted the trophy. That was already the defining moment of his international career. And then he came back 4 years later and broke the all-time scoring record 2 days before turning 39. The criticism about international performances did not just die, it was buried, and the shovel was a left-footed finish in Dallas on a Monday evening in June. There is a version of this argument that ends at 2022, and Messi still wins it comfortably. But then 2026 happened, and it is still happening. He has scored 5 goals in this World Cup already across 2 games. He has scored in 6 consecutive World Cup matches. It equals the all-time record held by Just Fontaine in 1958 and Jarzinho in 1970. He did it at 38, against professional defenses in the most scrutinized football competition on the planet. Most players decline sharply after 30. The legs go. The first steps that made them dangerous is no longer there on demand, and they compensate by becoming less of what they were. Messi at 34, 35, 36, 37 and now 38 has continued to be the most decisive player on the pitch whenever the stakes are highest. The comparisons across the sport's great careers is blunt. Pelé won his last World Cup at 29. Maradona played in his last World Cup at 34, but was a shadow of himself by that stage. Cruyff retired from international football at 31 before his prime had fully closed. Zidane retired in 2006 at 34 after the World Cup final, in which he was sent off for a headbutt, a moment that colored the memory of his ending. Only Ronaldo has maintained anything close to elite level goal contributions into his mid 30s, and he has done so by moving to Saudi Arabia, where the defensive intensity does not compare to what Messi faces at a World Cup against Austria, France, or whoever comes next in the knockout rounds. What Messi is doing right now in this tournament is without historical precedent. No player this decisive, this productive in a World Cup at this age. The word longevity undersells it. This is not hanging on, this is still leading. Messi has won the Ballon d'Or 8 times. This is not the most important metric. The award has always been an element of politics and geography, but it reflects something real. Across 8 different calendar years, the consensus of football professional community was that Lionel Messi was the best player on the planet. No other player in history has won it more than 7 times. Ronaldo, his closest contemporary, has won 5. Cruyff won 3, remarkable for an era where the voting was more geographically restricted. Maradona won 1, Zidane won 1. Pelé never won it, not because he was not extraordinary, but because Brazilian players were initially excluded from the voting eligibility. The accumulation of those awards across different decades, different teams, different roles within those teams reflects a sustained level of dominance that other legends achieved in narrower windows. Maradona's absolute peak 1984 to 1990 may be the most intense concentration of individual brilliance ever seen. But Messi's 2007 to 2026 sustained dominance is longer, more consistent, and more statistically documented. And it is not over. There is one more thing worth saying clearly. Every player in this comparison was extraordinary. Pelé's charisma and goal scoring record transformed what the world believed football could be. Maradona's 1986 World Cup is the most iconic individual tournament in history. Cruyff changed how the game thinks about space. Zidane elevated football to an art form in a way that even those who do not like football could appreciate. Ronaldo made consistency and physical excellence a philosophy. None of that is diminished by recognizing that one player sits a level above the rest. Across the broader stage of metrics, goals per game, assists, XG, efficiency, dribbling, chance creation, knockout performance, international success, longevity, and adaptability, Lionel Messi's career sits at the intersection of every form of excellence that football can measure. In the end, the argument is not really about statistics. Numbers are how we describe greatness after the fact. They are the receipt, not the experience. The experience is watching a man who turns 39, receive the ball 20 yards out, absorb a dummy, and finish calmly into the corner to break a record that nobody thought would fall for another decade. It is the Dallas crowd, 70,000 people, understanding what they have just witnessed. It is the penalty he missed in the 9th minute of that same game and the way it changed nothing what came after that. This is the thread running through his entire career. The pressure does not diminish him. Somehow, implausibly, it appears to clarify him. The greatest player of all time is the one who at the highest level, under the greatest pressure, produced the most extraordinary things most consistently across the longest possible time. By that measure, there is an answer. 8 Ballon d'Ors, 4 Champions Leagues, 10 La Liga titles, 7 Copa del Reys, 1 World Cup, 2 Copa Americas, 6 European Golden Shoes, Olympic gold medals, 44 senior trophies across 5 clubs and 6 World Cups. Lionel Messi. If you found this compelling or if you think we got something wrong, tell us in the comments. Not the emotional version, bring the data. We will read every argument. Football Uncensored. Next episode coming soon.